Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be speaking to all of you on Reverse Pitch Day of the Reverse Innovation Program. So today I'll be presenting about two key challenges from Credit Bureau Cambodia's side. But before that, let me just quickly introduce briefly about CBC to you. So CBC, which stands for Credit Bureau Cambodia. So Credit Bureau Cambodia is the credit reporting institution in Cambodia. So if you've ever applied for a loan or if you have ever taken a loan, you will have a credit history. And so all the data and details of those credit history are maintained by CBC. So broadly, CBC is a financial information and data analytics company, and which has been operational since 2012. And we are regulated under the Procast on Credit Reporting from the National Bank of Cambodia. So currently we have around 167 member financial institutions. So CBC today is a key financial infrastructure in the country, and what we actually aspire to do is to enable frictionless data-driven decision making in Cambodia. So here's just a very quick list of the solutions that we offer. I will not go into the details, but I'll just quickly summarize it. So a lot of solutions are what we provide to the financial institutions in Cambodia. So including the credit report for consumers and commercial entities, as well as the credit score. And we also provide a range of data analytics report and several like big data-based portfolio review and monitoring services as well. And if you're an individual, of course, you can come to CBC office as well as go to the branches of our partner financial institutions and always get a credit report. And recently, we also launched our mobile app just around 2 weeks back, and which allows you a range of solutions to access your financial health, including the credit report, credit score, and credit monitoring alerts. So now let me go to the first challenge, and as I mentioned earlier as well, like CBC is a financial infrastructure, and so a lot of our initiatives and a lot of the solutions that we try to develop are directly geared towards helping the sector, helping the industry at large, and how data can be used to enable more smooth and efficient operations for different businesses in the country. So this brings me to the first challenge, which is on identity authentication and digital onboarding. So actually, when we look into the financial sector, I mean that is one sector where identity verification of customers is very critical, very important at the time of customer onboarding, right? Additionally, not just financial institutions, like even if you look at telecom companies and insurance sector, among others, like I may have missed out some of the other sectors as well, where the verification and authentication of the ID of customers is very important. Of course, when we talk about identity, the government databases are important, right? So that's the first thing we think about, when we talk about ID verification. But in addition to government databases, and after that comes credit bureau data as well. Like if you look in many countries, credit bureau data forms a major data source in ID verification. So I mean, I can say this even in the case of Cambodia, because now, like CBC has a lot of data about a lot of individuals, and what is most significant to note is these data they have reported from a range of financial institutions throughout the economy, and they have already gone through a certain level of KYC check. So this tends to be an important data source for ID verification. And the CBC being an infrastructure, a key financial infrastructure in the economy, what we really aim to do is we aim to provide a financial infrastructure for performing industry-wide KYC. So this is the situational context, and let me just go to the problem overview very quickly. So now why is, we do have IDs in place and, we do have certain data sources, but what is the problem, right? So there are two main problems. So one is like one same person could be using multiple forms of ID. So if I go to a bank A and use my one form of ID to open a loan account, and then go to another bank and use a different kind of ID, which could be like a national ID or birth certificate. So which is equally possible. And when this thing happens, it's not possible to relate, correlate the different IDs a person is using. So establishing unique identity of a person is a challenge. And the next one is, if you submit an ID document to any of the business, like a bank or telecom company, and to verify whether the document is actually authentic or not, to do a real-time verification, right? I mean, and whether the information in that ID document is valid, and whether the person actually bringing that ID is actually the person who is the original owner of that ID. This kind of verification is actually not very convenient to do. I believe there have been some pilot initiatives by certain institutions, but probably at a mass and also in a very convenient platform, it's not yet possible. So this is the main problem, right? And building on this problem, let me just go a bit deeper into like what are the implications of this problem. So one of the challenge that we face is mainly access to credit. So the credit histories of individuals are built on their identification documents and linked to the identities, right? So for example, let's imagine there is a very good borrower who always pays loans on time and who has a very good credit history, and who might turn out to be a very profitable customer for a potential lender. But even in such case of a very good lender, like if they're using different IDs in different institutions, then their credit histories also become distributed, right? So it's so that borrower may not be able to realize the full benefits of having a very good credit history. And again, the same thing with the lender. Like even the lender will probably miss out because it may not be possible all the time to link the credit histories across multiple IDs. So this is one major challenge, and also to talk further about customer onboarding. So whenever like a bank or a telecom company probably and other businesses are trying to they receive an ID document from a customer, and how easy or difficult is it to verify that the ID document is actually authentic, valid, and actually to verify and authenticate that that person bringing that ID is actually the original owner of that ID, right? So this kind of authentication is still quite challenging, and in the process of validating it, there will also be a lot of manual processes are involved, which kind of decreases the efficiency in onboarding a customer and makes the process a bit less smooth. And certainly, there has been a lot of progress, but I think certainly there is a lot of room for improvement to make the whole customer onboarding process much more efficient and smooth. So building on these two scenarios, what we can see is there are also chances like some fraudulent activities can happen where one person is bringing another person's ID, and maybe sometimes they look similar, and maybe it's kind of difficult to establish, whether the person bringing another person's ID is not the authorized person. It's difficult to establish that, right? So I think these three are the key challenges. But of course, when you look in the larger economic and business activities, there are a few areas this can be related to. Like I think if we see in many countries, including Cambodia, there's a lot of business-to-business credit relationships also happening. And I think if we can establish a very clear and unique ID, I think these things can be tracked better. And for a lot of businesses, especially SMEs who are looking for business-to-business credit, I think this can be very useful. And nowadays, also for employment verification, it's very common nowadays to do background reference checks for employment. And again, if you have a good record as well, and if it's distributed across multiple ID, it's very difficult for the employer or the company who's doing verification for you to gather all these positive details. So I think overall, if we can have a very reliable and comprehensive and integrated system, which can address these problems, of course, there can be a very high level of efficiency gains in the whole customer onboarding and authentication process. So then what is the solution, right? The solution is eKYC, which stands for Electronic Know Your Customer. So basically, eKYC is a solution that enables remote and paperless verification and authentication of the identity of an individual or a legal entity. So some of the features, when I think of eKYC solution, like some of the features that will be ideal to be in there, and especially in our context, is of course it has to be an integrated software platform that is able to access multiple identity databases to verify the identity of a person. And also it should also be able to apply rules and logic to verify, screen, authenticate unique identity of people using multiple forms of identity, right? So it has to be able to apply intelligent rules and logic. So there's also different models that need to be applied here. And also moving a bit beyond the technical features, it should be feasible to be developed in the current economic and regulatory landscape in the country. And scalability is again very important. It should be scalable to cover multiple data sources and also multiple user bases. And since we're dealing with identity data, it's very sensitive, very confidential. So any solution that tries to address this issue has to ensure that it has a very high level of security, and also the data protection measures are taken very, very carefully. So this is the first set of challenge, along with the expected solution on eKYC and identity authentication and customer onboarding. Now, let me move quickly to the second challenge, right? So again, now as a bureau, we of course, increasing the credit efficiency of credit markets is always, one of our primary focus. And whenever we think of solutions, we always think of, how we can provide innovative solutions to bring more efficiency, and smarter decision making and risk management across the sector. So in thinking about this, another area is, how we can enable greater access to finance for those people who are underbanked and unbanked. So basically, if you're new to credit, or if you have if you just entered the credit market, but if you're still very new and you don't have much information, right? So basically, what's happening is, one of our key products that CBC has is a credit report and also a credit score. So so every time you apply for a loan, so basically the lenders will access your credit report, and increasingly a lot of lenders also access credit score whenever they're doing a credit risk assessment. So this report provides a lot of information about borrowers across all financial institutions. So, but the thing is, if you've never taken a loan before, and if you're applying for a loan for the first time, so there will be no credit history, and then it becomes so basically no credit report generated, right, and no credit score as well. So in this case, it becomes very difficult to assess your credit risk and credit worthiness. And also, another scenario could be you started taking loans, but you're still very new. You only started recently, so there is very less information, which is often in our industry we call it like thin credit file. Then also it becomes very difficult. So in this case, what is possible, right? And is there anything that can be done to provide credit risk assessment data for them? So increasingly, there is in the last 5 years, especially, there has been a growing trend to tap alternate data points that can be used. So which is beyond traditional credit report data, and that can be used to generate credit score and other kinds of credit reports, which can easily be used by lenders to do credit risk assessment of individuals. So yeah, I mean, just to elaborate on that, there are certain groups of population who are more likely to be not having credit history, right? So for example, if you are a young individual who only recently entered the age group where you are eligible to take credit for the first time, so naturally you will not be having any credit history before. And then you could be for example, if you're not at the level of financial literacy earlier, that you were aware and able to access formal financial services. So I think in that case also, you would not have credit history, because probably you might have been taking loans before, but maybe from informal money lenders. And then this is another scenario as well. And also, increasingly now, if you look at a lot of business owners, I think either they are not able to access loans, probably because they don't have the proper identity and due diligence documents, or maybe the loans were not so affordable to them. There could be so many things. I mean, it's just I'm just trying to list out some only. And also, just to add one more example, and maybe we can take the case of farmers. Maybe in their case also, in a lot of cases also, it might be difficult for them to access, and maybe sometimes a lot of individuals could be accessing their savings or taking a loan from friends or family, and maybe no formal credit. So I think when you think about all these things, and when these people apply, when a person with no credit history or very limited credit history apply for loans, so it becomes very challenging, right? And so for the lender to do a proper assessment of your credit worthiness, it also becomes it takes more effort. So I'm not saying that credit report and credit score are the only elements that a lender uses, but still, it forms a major set of information that any lender would use when doing your credit risk assessment. So now what can be done? Now what can be done to address this problem, right? Because if the lender doesn't have adequate information about your credit worthiness, then they naturally would have to spend more time, like trying to gather more evidence, more data, more information about you. And often it may result in like where, you might need more collateral or more, maybe they also need somebody to be a guarantor. And there are cases, like the interest rates could be high. I mean, there could be multiple scenarios, right, which may vary from lender to lender, but I'm just trying to make a very generic statement over here. So that's why it's become important, if we want to find an efficient way to enable access to finance to these kind of borrower groups, it's important that we tap the alternate data points, which kind of bridges the information asymmetry gaps between the lender and the borrower and enables greater access to finance for them at more affordable rates. Because if we look at these population segments as well, borrower segments also, they are, it's important to enable access to finance for them. So, and as I was mentioning earlier as well, this has resulted in several problems, right? So it becomes, because the whole underwriting process, the process of a loan assessment or credit risk assessment for lenders becomes more inefficient because they have to spend more time. And of course, in a lot of cases, the loans could also be less affordable than if you had a credit history. Now, but also one of the reasons, like despite these challenges, one of the reasons we're talking about, alternate data and alternate credit scoring is because now with advancements in digital technologies, there are new alternate data sources emerging, every other day, right? I mean, so with our increased activity in the digital world and also like increased technological capacities, how we can tap more alternate data. And these data can be used to generate alternate score, which has proven to be very effective in many markets to do credit risk assessment. So just to look into some of the examples or potential sources of alternate data. So, maybe a person doesn't have a history of taking a loan from a formal institution, but maybe he or she may have a record of utility payments, like payment to electricity or payment to water supply, or even telecom payments like phone bills and other things. And, I think in a lot of cases, like, like the cash flow data or the records on the transaction payments a person has can also say a lot about their repayment behavior. And some of the the expert companies, they've also gone to analyze call and SMS data, as well as smartphone and social media usage data. These are like the whole range of very broad range of alternate data points, which which can be captured, modeled, and you can apply different algorithms through machine learning and develop an alternate credit score. And in general, like I think alternate credit score has proven to be very useful as well, like because it provides a very all-round perspective on creditworthiness of an individual, because you see like the data points are also very broad. And I think because we're tapping a lot of data points here, it also is very useful for fraud detection, because there's a lot of attributes about a person's behavior, that comes out through alternate data points and alternate credit scoring. And because these data points are generated on a more regular basis through a lot of activities an individual is engaged in, right? So it allows continuous monitoring, and also moving forward, like what this can directly support a lot of lenders is on automated loan decisioning. So I think by now I focus on the problem, and also I think I've already touched on the expected solution as well, right? So the expected solution is using alternate data to come up with an alternate credit scoring. So, but in terms of the expected features, of course, it needs to be predictive enough it needs to be reliable enough to predict the likelihood of loan default of new to credit individuals who are also called like credit invisibles, right? And also like in any kind of solution that is directly tapping alternate data and generating score, we need to also make sure that the data sets captured are actually independent data than what the normal credit report is capturing, so that it can directly complement or supplement the traditional credit report data and traditional credit score. So, and again, like in any solution that we are looking for, because we're looking at a larger ecosystem all the time, right? So the solution also has to be scalable so that it can be adopted by a larger number of financial institutions in the country, across the industry. And also in terms of integration with tapping multiple data points, it should be more flexible. And again, like, all these data are very, very sensitive because it's a lot of personal data. And so any solution that is proposed also needs to be very, very sensitive and making sure it's taken care of, data security and privacy. So I think these are the two solutions that these are the two challenges that I would like to bring forward from CBC. And I think with this, I think I've come to the end of my presentation. And at this point, I'd be very happy to take any questions that you may have.
So good afternoon, Mr. Prashatan Pradhan. So I am Kui Suong, a startup development specialist from Techo Startup Center. So in the Q&A session, I will be the moderator. So I would like to read the first question for you coming from the live event. For the data source, CBC would help to contact the data source provider for Challenger, or where should I get the sandbox?
Okay. So I think I'm not sure which challenge this is referring to, but I think in general, like but maybe I can just answer in general, right? I mean, when we talk about eKYC and alternate score, I think because often like there are different data sources, and I think from Bureau's perspective as well, like I think at this point we are quite open to exploring data partnerships. So I think if there is like a like a qualified proposal, I think this is something we can discuss as well on a collaborative model. But I think maybe we need to also review the options, the proposals.
Thank you very much for the answer. The second question is, what kinds of data that CBC open to the public?
Okay, so regarding this, I think there are several of our reports that are available to the public. Actually, if you go to our website, like we watch on a quarterly basis, we publish the Consumer Credit Index, which show a lot of movements in the consumer credit in the market, right? So this is something that everybody can access, and from time to time, we also have certain publications which are available. But I think, but also like in addition to this, but a lot of our solutions, they're also very, like specifically. Very confidential as well. So, I mean, any individual can access their credit report, but I mean, of course, then, only that individual can access. So, I mean, if you're a member, if an individual in the public, you can come to CBC office, or you can go to the branches of our authorized agents, and also like download the CBC app, and you can always access your credit report and credit score, and also monitor any changes in your credit history. But then this will be very specific to KYC check and verification of the identity that you are the right person.
Thank you very much. The third question, does CBC use any sort of deep learning based face verification?
So actually, I think, yeah, I mean, I think we're always trying to enhance this kind of thing, right? So if you go to our, if you've ever used our mobile app, which was launched recently, so as a part of the KYC check, you need to scan your ID and also take a selfie, which actually detects that it's a live person. And before you can proceed with the registration, there is a matching between the selfie taken on the app and also the ID in the document, right? So, I mean, of course, there are certain rules and algorithms applied over there. And I think like, I mean, and with any kind of like, I think all these processes are very learning driven, right? And I think along the way, we will always be like, feeding into new rules and new knowledge that we gather and enhance it as well.
Thank you.
I hope I can answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Question number 4, regarding eKYC, how do CBC protect user data?
Yeah, so I think maybe I wouldn't just say from eKYC perspective, but in general, like from credit reporting perspective, I think credit report is a very, very sensitive. Credit history data is very sensitive, and CBC takes very, very strong care of these things. And of course, we are always like governed by the Prakash on credit reporting, which also has very strict regulations. So I think there are regulatory frameworks which we comply to ensure that any kind of data we work in is very, very strongly protected and is fully compliant. I mean, there's a lot of data security measures that we take, but I can tell you, like from a regulatory perspective, also we have adopted the utmost security.
Thank you very much for the answer. Question number 5. How CBC can manage credit portfolio at gray lender? For example, motor shop that offer loan to customer by just collecting ID card, pay slip without checking any record.
How CBC can manage? Sorry, I'm just trying to understand this question.
Okay.
For example. So I'm not really sure about this question about managed credit portfolio at gray lender, for example, motor shop. So, but I'm not okay. Maybe I'll just try answering this in the sense like because CBC has so you see, like as I mentioned in the beginning, there are around 167 member financial institutions of CBC. So so the members are the ones who actually contribute data to CBC and also access data from CBC. So I think if there is any entity that would like to receive or access this credit report and score data from CBC, I think and they are not yet a member. Like I think they can engage with us on how they can become a member and start contributing data and also accessing our data as well. Do you think that's what the question was about?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah.
So the last question is, do you think that CBC can work with Agri-Buddy regarding the credibility for farmer?
Okay.
Do you know?
Okay, I think this is a this is a very specific question, but of course I think I think again, like it depends on what is the like specifics of the collaboration, and but I think in general, of course, we're always open to new collaborations and partnerships that can allow us to access more data and serve the Cambodian financial market better. So I think of course in general we are open to discussions on partnerships and collaborations, but of course then I think it again goes back to what are the specifics.
Thank you very much for your detailed and comprehensive answer, Mr. Prashatan. So we have come to the end of for this Q&A session. So I would like to give the floor to Dr. Rilida to continue to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.